well, who really wants to talk about failure, right? I mean, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to say that I had an idea and it didn't work.
Det her er Tyler Goss, Global Innovation Development Manager hos Turner Construction i Kalifornien. På BIPS-konferencen 2016 var han årets keynote, hvor han holdt indlægget med titlen Learning from Our Mistakes.
We wrap a lot of ourselves up in our emotions and our biases and our self-worth in the work we do. And if you do something that doesn't work, it's very hard to admit that to someone else. I mean, it's actually just sort of a central human failing. And I think we don't talk about it in public because we don't want to be perceived as a company that wastes time on failed efforts.
I sit indlæg refererer Tyler Goss til økonomen Albert Wengers jobloop, hvor mennesker fastholder sig selv i et kredsløb af at arbejde for at tjene penge, så vi kan købe ting. Men mennesker behøver ikke gøre det samme om og om igen. Det har vi maskiner og computere til. I stedet burde vi fokusere på et kredsløb af at lære og skabe og dele det, vi har lært. Ifølge Tyler Goss er det menneskets sande kald.
The only way you really expand rapidly the knowledge base of an organization is through failure. Failure lets you know exactly what are the limits of current practice, what are the constraints you're under. Then you can start to operate on those things as variables.
Ifølge Tyler Goss er der masser af gode eksempler på virksomheder, som har lært af at lave fejl.
SpaceX is a great example, right? They've had some very public failures very recently. They have been trying to land a rocket stage on a barge in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean in high seas for 2 years, right? And they had 5 or 6 very public failures where the thing blew up very dramatically. But every time they did that, they learned the limits of their software, they learned the limits of the hardware, they learned what they needed to do to engineer the solution, and now they can land them successfully, right? And so they were able to do something that was not known or not believed to be possible for many decades. And now that they've done it, now they have a competitive advantage.
Men hvordan har Tyler Goss det så med at dele sine egne fejl?
My whole point and what I've been trying to do for the last 6 months is to start talking about Turner's failures. I still find it very hard to talk about where I failed, even though I'm sitting here telling everyone we should be talking about these things. So let me talk about a couple of failures we had. In 2012, I moved from New York to San Francisco. I was the regional VDC manager for Northern California, in charge of all of our virtual design construction efforts. So that's coordination and sequencing and cost estimation and facilities management, all the things that we do through BIM. And I had my boss, who was the operations manager there, said we wanted to BIM up the estimating department. That was the extent of it. Again, he didn't understand what he meant. He just wanted to BIM it. So that was the extent of his knowledge. And so I went and I went to Vico, which was the company at the time. They were then subsequently bought by Trimble. I went to Vico and said, well, you have the only product on the market right now that does a real integrated 5D model. That you can take the model data and the cost data and the schedule data, integrate together and get a real understanding of the dynamic cost nature of the building. So I want to buy the software. I bought the software, and now I want to bring it to my estimators. So I brought it to the estimators. I spent $80,000 on training, and what I didn't do, and what the failure was, is I didn't go and ask the estimators what they needed. Because ultimately they liked it, they saw the value of it, but they couldn't. They understood the theoretical value of it, but it didn't matter to what they needed. The estimator's problem, which I didn't ask them for, which I should have asked, was that they had to produce estimates so fast that they didn't have time to do anything really fancy, So from that, I learned, okay, well, I can't use this 5D fully integrated, the market, my internal market of the estimators isn't ready yet. So I can't use this really robust 5D solution. I need to find some other way to do this. And if the thing that they need is speed, I need to find a way to serve them quantities faster so they can do the modeling effort. That sort of it made me realize, okay, I should just let the machine do what the machine is good at, which is counting. and let the people do what they're good at, which is building the logic of the models. So I went and out and bought a different piece of software called Celebri, which was much more lightweight, was able to do rapid iterative estimates. I could, once I set the logic of the quantity takeoff, every time we got a new model from the architect, we could pull the quantities and have them, to the estimator immediately. And that ended up being successful, ended up being adopted, because I realized that I was approaching it. I didn't really think about what the problem was first. The failure was because I didn't think about the problem. Then I was able to and it allowed me to go back and find that problem, find what the real problem was, and find a solution that would address that problem, not what the problem I thought that I was thinking of in my head.
So the failure in the end became a successful failure.
Yeah. See, I still can't talk about failure, right? Because
That's true.
but that's the point, right? The point is that the failures tell you the limits of practice. Then you can start to expand from that. You can say, okay, I can't do it with this system. I can't do it with this platform. I can't do, or the market's not ready, the customer's not ready. So I need to find a different way to effect the change that I think is valuable. I just need to find a different system to engineer, engineer a different system.
Okay.